Nearly 500 years ago, a dark-skinned maiden appeared to an Aztec peasant, Juan Diego, on Tepeyac Hill outside Mexico City, the first of 4 apparitions. According to legend, the maiden told him in his native Nahuatl language that she was the mother of God. The apparition of the Virgin Mary implored him to convince the Archbishop of Mexico City to build a church in her honor. The Archbishop did not believe Juan Diego and asked for proof that he had really seen the Virgin Mary. When she appeared to Juan Diego the 4th time, she told him to pick flowers from the hillside, including Castilian roses which were not native to the area. Juan Diego wrapped them in his cloak and took them to the Archbishop. When he laid the cloak out for the Archbishop, it revealed a detailed image of the Virgin Mary, still preserved in Mexico at the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe, as she would become known. The event would spark the conversion of millions of indigenous people to the Catholic faith. The Catholic Church deemed the apparitions a miracle, now commemorated on December 12th around the world by Catholics, those of Mexican descent and some indigenous cultures. Many communities include a fiesta on the weekend closest to December 12th. The Mexican-American community centered on William Street in Albuquerque's South Broadway neighborhood is one that does. The year 2024 marked the 100th anniversary of the first celebration in the neighborhood.
The Virgen de Guadalupe appears to a very poor Indian man, and it's at a time, a period when the native populations were declining due to diseases and slavery by the Spaniards in their invasion of the area we now call Mexico. And it was that period in time when the faith of the people, their faith, was not answering, not helping them. And as in, I think in all colonized countries, when Catholicism came in, it was like the answer to helping them, giving them some form of salvation.
He spoke to them through her cloak. If you look at Mary's cloak, there's symbols in her cloak, different symbols. I've done a little research, and they relate to the Aztec people at the time. They could relate to the Aztec people.
And with that image, that story, that converted the indigenous people of Mexico to Catholicism.
She wants us to be faithful. She wants us to go to church. She wants us to honor her son. And that's why the church was built. Continue our faith, that's what it's all about. And I think that's what they do here in this neighborhood, is continue their faith. They hang on to that. Mary came to us, she appeared to us. She was there and for us.
I am the granddaughter of Andres and Maura Santiago, and they came in 1907 to Albuquerque from La Barca, the village of La Barca, which is in the state of Jalisco in Mexico. They came directly from La Barca to Albuquerque. And it's not that they had intention at all to be here. They were in fact pretty happy in their village where they were married. They had 4 children. They were happily living their life with their families when a group of ruales, which are like they were criminal rangers that came in. This was the time of real beginning of upheaval, 1907. This was before the Mexican Revolution. But they came in and they were raiding the village. My grandfather found himself in a situation where his life was being threatened, and he knew that if he did not leave immediately, he would be killed. So all he can recall, and this is a story from my grandfather, are these whisperings that had been passed down about opportunity of work here in Albuquerque, in the Albuquerque rail yards. He had had no intention of leaving, but since he felt he had no choice, and he'd heard about this opportunity, he decided he had to leave immediately. I tell you that story because that's a story that's similar to many of the people who moved to the community. And they all came, many from La Barca, to work in the railroad.
When I was doing my research for my book, I found records dating back to 1924. I believe it was the Mendez family that I had seen or read about that had came up with this idea of let's have a fiesta. Of course, there were other families probably thinking the same thing, and they were started gathering, and they call themselves the compadres. I call them the compadres. That's where the first organizers were. They would meet in deserted pool hall, which is no longer there. It was sitting where the Cesar Chavez overpass is right now.
My family's been in this neighborhood for, I can't remember, about 90 years, more than 90 years. So we've been here for the fiestas for many, many years. And it started, as far as I know, I remember that it was, the area was a group of people from Mexico that settled there. And they brought the Virgin with them and kept it going. And it's been going ever since then, but a lot of people don't know anything about it. And then other people started getting involved in it, and it started growing and growing and more.
The original settlers here in the neighborhood that came from Mexico, as I said earlier, the Hernandez family, the Andrade family, the Santiago family, the Nunez family, that all these families came from La Barca, Jalisco. So then over the years, many years, like 20, 30 years, it evolved into an organization. As you see at Los Guadalupanos, it had the name of La Liga de Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe, and then it became Club Guadalupano for a while, and then it became Los Guadalupanos. Now it's Los Guadalupanos de San Francisco Javier because it's under the church's purview, if you will.
It's important because Our Lady of Guadalupe, she's the mother of the Americas. And so a lot of the people in the area are Hispanic, Mexican descent. So it's in their blood, it's in their heritage. They've been honoring her for centuries, you know. And we've been lucky that we got to do this here in the South Broadway area. And we're fortunate that, you know, we've had a lot of support from the neighborhood, the church, and the media. Media follows us, and, you know, we're more than happy. And this helps us spread the word to honor Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Leaving families, leaving deep embedded traditions had to be really traumatic for these families. But they had one thing that was going to keep them together, and that was their faith. And that was their faith in the Virgen de Guadalupe and in the Catholic Church. This is the one thing that they relied on, that they prayed and hoped that they would find guidance and support through faith. So it's that faith that they knew that they would have to pay homage to in some ways if ever they were to be a community again, to be successful again as families.
The current celebration is a mix of liturgical services and public events. Saturday features the blessing of altars in the South Broadway neighborhood by deacons of the church. Sunday includes a Mass conducted by the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Santa Fe, followed by a procession on South Broadway and into the Williams Street neighborhood. The Archbishop blesses 4 main altars along the way, representing the 4 visitations by the Virgin Mary to Juan Diego. The procession begins and concludes at St. Francis Xavier Church.
We continue to celebrate Our Lady of Guadalupe, and it hasn't changed a whole lot, except that we don't have, of course, the processions we used to. We used to have at least 3 processions on the weekend. We had the Saturday evening procession. We would have Vespers in the church, which still go on. There's still prayers and novenas done. There was a time when they would have the actual Mass, the evening vigil Mass at St. Francis, and then followed by the procession that would be the clergy walking with people, the devotees, and actually carrying candles. So that wasn't too long ago that we were still doing that.
My cousins were telling me, and I remembered when they told me, they could hear the mariachis come Saturday night when the processions would begin, coming down the streets. The first thing you would hear are the mariachis singing, and the guitarrón and the coronetas playing. You could just hear them blocks away. And then we would come, everybody knew, to pull out the candles, because you would be joining them, because right behind the mariachis were the priests. And the priests were coming and blessing the altars in preparation for the Sunday processions. Behind them then were all the rest of us, as we would join behind, singing, laughing, and walking the processions. And young men joining the girls, flirting. There was flirting going on. There was the parents, making sure the kids stayed in line, and then singing as loud as they could with the mariachi songs, and then waiting as the priest blessed, and some of the parents would wander off to the sides, and I call it their mischievousness, would go to the back room and have a little traguito of wine or a little whiskey, and they'd come and join, and they would be laughing even louder, and us kids would be, the candles, wax falling all over us, and just throwing it around. And so we weren't quite so holy, but it was a time of connection. And I think that's the most important part. And reconnection with our neighbors, with our friends, as we walked those Saturday nights, because we were really free to do whatever we wanted.
When I was growing up, there was an altar in most every family. Every house would put out an altar. And then they'd have bonfires in the vacant lots, and people would gather and they would talk. And some people they would talk. And you would go to the different houses, and it was like an open house. You come in and you would have pozole, you would have tamales, bizcochitos. They would offer you what they had. And it was so neat. It was just a reuniting of the community.
I was born into this culture. Every year we would dress up as angels, because that was what all the young girls did in the neighborhood.
My mom would make the little wings out of hangers and then wrap stuff, whatever she could, to sparkle. And here we were, these angels, and my brothers were dressed in the altar boy smocks. And on Sundays, we were part of the processions, and we'd walk right across Broadway, and we learned the songs. We practiced them with our mothers, in Spanish, not in English. Everything was in Spanish. It was reminding us that our roots were from La Barca, Mexico.
As I got older, growing up, my Aunt Rose, who's now passed, decided that we should include the Matachinas from the East Mountains, the Matachinas from the Carnue and San Antonito specifically, my grandmother's village where she came from. And so that is when we became more involved in La Fiesta, because then I had to be the Malinche. I had to be the little girl in white that dances with Matachinas. So then that was my part. So I graduated from an angel to a Malinche.
What I remember is most of the women in the neighborhood used to get together and make flowers from napkins and from crepe paper. And they used to start that a couple months before to put on the altar.
We would cut the papel picado, what we call the little flags. Very simple designs. They weren't fancy, but you'd cut the paper and fold them over and make these diamond shapes inside the papel picado. My tia would then mix water and flour. That was our glue. Then she would take the strings and put them up an attic there at 1400 Williams that were as long as the house. And then we would glue those papel picado on those strings. And then that Saturday morning, all the boys in the neighborhood would start digging the big holes for the postas, that they would put up on the streets, where then they could hang these stringed flags across the streets.
I do remember one time, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing, but when they were because they'd put the poles and they put the banners across the street, and the ground was frozen, and they had to use the torch to get the ice broken and the dirt soft and get it and work it down about 30 feet and to put the poles up. And the people did it. The people really sacrificed quite a bit back then.
Participation in the Fiesta has declined in recent years due to the pandemic and changing population of the neighborhood. After 100 years of celebrations, there is a question about whether La Fiesta will remain in its current form.
The last several years, it's just fading. There's fewer people that are putting altars up. There are less people that actually come to the fiestas and enjoy the fiestas. And as far as the open houses and stuff, I really don't know if that exists anymore or not. It does, a few close family friends, but it's that's a dying art.
The Archdiocese and the church don't really care to have a procession through the streets anymore because of the insurance part of it. They rather we just celebrate with a mass and then go to the hall and finish celebrating in the hall with a pozole dinner. They would like for us to stop stop the procession. I grew up with the procession. It's been 100 years in making and been going on for 100 years, and to stop it would be devastating to our group.
I love this fiesta. I still come back to it. My husband is like, well, you don't live there anymore, and people tell me, well, you no longer live there, Gloria. It's like a piece of me. You can't take a piece of me away from me. You can't take it's like, you can't take my culture away. It's just part of my culture. It's part of where I grew up. And it's, my grandmother's spirit is here. And my mother's is too.
This is something that I wouldn't want to see end. But how long can I do it? I really don't know. How long can Pat and the other members, the other Guadalupanos, do it? I don't know. We're not a young group, but it's sad to think that it may end soon.
We're gonna do our best to keep it going, but like I said, we've got a year to debate with the Archdiocese and the priests. So we'd love to keep it going. It's one of the only celebrations like it in the city of Albuquerque. We were just honored with a proclamation from the mayor. We had a proclamation from the governor's office celebrating our group as the group celebrating 100 years. So it's a tradition that's been going on for 100 years, and for someone just to want to end it, that's kind of sad. It breaks my heart.